with the Minister of Justice and Attorney General that it is absolutely imperative, absolutely essential that Parliament pass legislation before the declaration on the stay of constitutional invalidity expires on June 6.
Statements by members. The honourable member for Davenport.
Madam Speaker, today on April 22nd, we mark the beginning of National Dance Week, across Canada's celebration of dance. The week will culminate on April 29th, which is recognized as International Dance Day. Madam Speaker, Canadians love to dance. We like to see dance. In 2013, there were more than 1.1 million attendees to 2,700 performances by 88 Canadian dance companies. We volunteer for dance. 4,200 volunteers collectively contributed 8,200 hours of their time to see these dance companies in 2013, and our children love to dance. In 2013, over 625,000 Canadian kids and youth were registered in organized dance, making dance the third most popular organized physical activity. I'm proud to say that in my riding of Davenport, it is rich with these dance programs and organizations, including Dreamwalker Dance Company. In recognition of our love to dance, I would like to celebrate all, right across Canada, who contribute to engaging Canadians through dance in their communities. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Perth Wellington.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to congratulate this year's inductees into the Agriculture Wall of Fame at the Stratford Perth Museum, John and Mary McIntosh of Perth South and David Carson of Listowel. These tremendous individuals were selected not only for their devotion to farming, but for their extensive volunteer work in our rural communities. David Carson is a world-renowned supplier of dairy cattle in Clydesdales. He contributes to 4-H programs, the Listowel Egg Society, charity auctions, and in 2005 he hosted the International Plowing Match at his farm. John and Mary McIntosh have made tremendous contributions to the Perth County Federation of Agriculture, the Perth Environmental Farm Plan, the Ontario Agriculture Hall of Fame, the Perth County Dairy Producer Committee, St. Mary's Memorial Hospital, and many local plowing matches. It is through great community volunteers and leaders like John, Mary, and David that rural Ontario is such a great place to live and grow. Thank you for all that you do, and congratulations.
The honourable member for Etobicoke-Mactaquac.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to recognize Earth Day 2016 and to talk about responsible resource development. But first, I'd like to wish a happy belated birthday to my 8-year-old daughter, Sarah. She's the apple of my eye, and yesterday was her 8th birthday. Madam Speaker, a clean environment and a strong economy do go hand in hand. Proper oversight, a robust consultation process, and steps to warrant the protection of the environment are crucial to successful natural resource development projects such as Energy East Pipeline and the Sisson Partnership Mining Project, which is in my riding. It is necessary to ensure sustainable, safe, responsible resource development, as we need to ensure to use this earth in our interests and in the best interests of our children and future generations to come, to leave a legacy for future generations like my daughter Sarah and children such as her. Earth Day should be every day, and as the Indigenous American proverb stated, we do not inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Esquimalt-Saanich-Sooke.
Madam Speaker, I rise once again today to call for action to save the southern resident killer whales. These whales have great spiritual significance for First Nations. They're an icon for Vancouver Island and an important part of our local tourism economy. Despite the recent baby boom, they remain on the edge, especially as newborn orcas have a mortality rate exceeding 50%. Madam Speaker, the whales are doing their part, but our Canadian government not so much. The southern residents were listed as endangered in 2003, and so the Species at Risk Act requires the Government of Canada to implement an action plan for their recovery. 13 years and 3 governments later, we still have no plan in place. In 2013, I introduced a motion laying out the elements necessary for an effective recovery plan. In 2014, the Conservative government put forward a draft plan missing most of those elements, but even that weak plan is still sitting on the shelf. I call on the Minister of Environment to act quickly to adopt an action plan for the southern resident killer whales, which has real action in it and the funding necessary to make sure these orcas will continue to inspire generations.
The honourable member for Don Valley West.
Madam Speaker, today we celebrate Earth Day, and tomorrow I will join Friends for Neighbourhood and Park Cleanups enjoying nature in the beautiful Don Valley. Next weekend, I will paddle the Don, a river whose history is inexplicably linked to countless generations of Toronto residents since it was first known to the Ojibwa as Wanscotonac. On Earth Day, we are reminded of our shared task to ensure that the Don Valley and its river will be a living place for generations to come. I'm proud of the broad new efforts of our government, which is making progress on climate change and on protecting our national parks. I'm equally proud of local groups like Friends of the Don East and the Evergreen Brickworks, who, with the City of Toronto, are working to restore the river that shaped Toronto and make better use of its adjacent green spaces. On Earth Day, I thank the students, volunteers, planners, and architects who are working hard to revitalize the Don Valley, and I invite you and all members to discover the Don. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke.
Madam Speaker, I rise today to pay tribute to a dear friend and longtime community stalwart, Kellard Witt. Kellard was born on August 26, 1926, on Twin Creek Farm near Pembroke, Ontario. He recently passed away at the age of 89. Kellard served his community in many ways, including as a municipal politician, serving 28 years on local council. He was forward-thinking, serving as the inaugural chair of the Ottawa Valley Waste Recovery Centre, establishing Renfrew County as an environmental leader with practices like waste diversion and recovery and green bin recycling occurring years before they were considered in more urban communities. In many ways, Kellard was my political mentor. He and his wife Shirley were always available to help any task that he was called upon to do. I first got to know Kellard as a man of deep and abiding faith. He was a pillar in the pro-life community, someone who was not afraid to walk the walk when it came time to talk the talk. I miss Kellard. To all his family, I share your grief. Thank you, Kellard, for making such a positive difference in the lives of so many.
L'honorable député.
The honourable member for La Salle et Mar Verdun.
Congratulate the Borough of Verdun, as well as Verdun Youth and the Montreal skateboarding community on the Verdun Skate Park that will see its official opening on May 27th.
This important sports infrastructure and training facilities will not only be a place for youth activities, where young people, particularly the most isolated and at risk, will be able to develop a passion for culture, exercise, and discover perseverance. This will also be a place where various communities and generations will be able to meet in the sharing of common experiences.
To visiting the park with my own children, and I wish skateboarders, BMXers, and others who will enjoy this park a happy International Go Skateboarding Day this June 21st.
L'honorable député.
The honourable member for Nickel Belt.
Madam Speaker,
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
today to congratulate the municipality of West Nipissing for their successful bid to host the International Ploughing Match and Rural Expo. This is a community rich in resources where the agricultural sector is a very prominent and vital part of the region's economy. I'm very proud of the many farmers in Nipissing West for their hard work, their dedication to their craft is very impressive. Depuis ses débuts en 1930,
Since it began in 1913, more than 100 years ago, it will be the second time that the International Ploughing Match will take place in Northern Ontario. I am very proud of this unique occasion to share everything that the North has to offer. You're all invited to the beautiful municipality of West Nipissing.
showcase the variety of unique local agricultural products enjoyed by residents and tourists alike. Congratulations, and I look forward to seeing you all at the beautiful municipality of West
The
Nipissing.
honourable member for Carleton.
This place is always changing. People come and go, dramas flare up and flame out, and stars are born and then fallen with the speed of light. Over 12 years, 5 elections, 7 offices, and 3 prime ministers. The one constant for me through it all has been my correspondence director of over a decade, Lucille Paculness. In that role, she's helped me respond to over 400,000 letters. It will shock the House to learn that not all of them have had nice things to say about me. Yet, despite the occasional tough customer, Lucille has literally never been in a bad mood. Forever the happy warrior, never an unkind word about a colleague, and always there for the team. Because of Lucille, when I knocked on thousands of doors in the last election, not a single person told me that we had not responded to their letter. As she moves to the next phase of her career and her life, I ask all members to join with me in thanking her for for over a decade of service to Parliament and all Canadians.
Bravo.
The honourable member for West Vancouver, Sunshine Coast, Sea to Sky Country. The honourable member for West Vancouver, Sunshine Coast, Sea to Sky Country.
Madam Speaker, I would like to invite all of my honourable colleagues to support the All-Party Juvenile Diabetes Caucus. 300,000 Canadians live with type 1 diabetes. I will never forget the day my daughter was diagnosed with type 1. My husband was out of town, and as I drove her to the hospital in December, I had all the windows rolled down, and I had to shake her the whole way to keep her from going unconscious. That night at Children's Hospital in Vancouver, all she kept saying to me was, "I'm so sorry, Mum." Children who live with chronic conditions take on a lot of responsibility, as do their families and friends. The overall incidence of type 1 diabetes is increasing, particularly among children 1 to 14 years old. Little children are diagnosed every day. Canada has a rich legacy of innovation in type 1 diabetes research. From the world-changing discovery of insulin by Sir Frederick Banting and Dr. Charles Best, to the Edmonton Protocol, to new areas of research such as encapsulation and the Artificial Pancreas Project, Canadian researchers are leading. With gratitude for Canada's research scientists and their continued...
The honourable member for Montarville, l'honorable député de Montarville.
Madam Speaker, I rise to inform members that Rail Safety Week in Canada will be this year from April 25th to May 1st. This is an annual campaign organized under the auspices of Operation Lifesaver, targeting awareness of safety around trains.
Canada supports initiatives to maintain the safety of people and vehicles around rail facilities and safety involving the transportation of dangerous goods by rail.
With one of the largest rail networks in the world, we have strengthened rail safety for all people and communities in Canada, and we will continue to do so. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Edmonton Riverbend.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Albertans are an amazing group of hard-working, dedicated people. However, they are being attacked by both the federal Liberals and the Alberta provincial NDP. And these attacks are only making it harder for Albertans to get back up. Last week, the Alberta NDP announced their intention, in spite of the struggling economy, to continue moving forward on a provincial carbon tax. This tax is already on top of the Liberal pet project of a federal carbon tax. Alberta unemployment remains high, and families are finding it harder every day to make ends meet. These carbon taxes will increase food prices and increase the price of heating homes and make it more expensive to fill up at the gas pumps. This carbon tax will hit small businesses, the businesses and the very entrepreneurial spirit that Albertans are known for. These tax increases are unfair to the hardworking people across Canada, but particularly in Alberta, where families are struggling to get by, and quite simply, Madam Speaker, now is not the time to be taxing Albertans more.
Member for Brampton West.
Madam Speaker, I'm honoured to speak in this House about Daffodil Month. April is a crucial month when Canadian Cancer Society volunteers work to raise awareness to support life-saving research for Canadians living with cancer. Madam Speaker, I've had the privilege to work as an oncology nurse and take care of many Canadians battling cancer, and for some, losing their lives to cancer, including my own aunt, Saji. I'm wearing my daffodil for their memory and to show support for all those fighting today. We have made great progress in cancer research in Canada, but there's still so much more to do. So I ask everyone to wear their daffodil for the rest of this month to show support for Canadians living with cancer and for the research that will one day mean that no Canadian has to fear cancer. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Abitibi Bay James Nunavik EU.
Way to the earth today, I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge and state my respect and solidarity with all Indigenous people around the globe who stand to defend their traditional territories. I would like to repeat the words of Solange Bordonez, who has successfully led her council pushing for collaboration with Barrick over development in their territory in southern Chile. She said, and I quote, "We are not fighting for money because with money I cannot water my garden. We have a cosmovision, a particular view of the world which very few people understand. We don't think of the water as separated from the earth, the air, or the sun. Love for Mother Earth is something that is sacred to us. We are not descendants of the original people. We are the people. Our ancestral power is rooted in our identity. That is, we identify ourselves by the land in our relationship with that land. End of quote. Madam Speaker, on Earth Day and every day, I stand by that philosophy.
The honourable member for Calgary Confederation.
Madam Speaker, on the same day that this Liberal government introduced legislation to help Canadians die, they also refused to give more Canadians the chance to live. It is quite disappointing that the Liberal government will not support a national organ donor registry, and it is very sad that we will find this out on the eve of National Organ and Tissue Donation Awareness Week. So Canada will remain the most developed nation in the world without a national registry. Over 4,500 Canadians are waiting for an organ transplant. Every donor can save up to 8 lives. Next weekend at Calgary Confederation Park, I will run in the 5th Annual Canadian Transplant Association's Transplant Trot. Transplants can have an amazing impact on so many lives, but we need more donors. Talk to your family and talk to your loved ones about your organ and tissue donation wishes. Thank you to the honourable member from Edmonton Manning for his hard work on his initiative, Bill C-223.
The honourable member for La Prairie. Madam Speaker, today, April 22nd, we're celebrating Earth Day around the world. This day is well established in North American minds for over 45 years, but it's only been celebrated since 95 in Quebec. Over 1 billion people across 192 countries will celebrate this day by participating in all kinds of awareness activities. Even though the day is symbolic, it reminds us of the importance of taking care of our planet. What must we do to contribute? Simply small gestures like planting trees or that of dealing with or reclaiming waste. We all clearly have an important role to play to maintain our beautiful planet, but we mustn't forget that our farmers are part of the solution to assure food security for future generations. Madam Speaker, I often tell my entourage that we must never forget that it's this beautiful earth that feeds us, and we risk ruining it if we don't do something today.
The honourable member for Calgary Mid-Deport.
Madam Speaker, on March 17th, United States Secretary of State John Kerry said that ISIS, quotes, is responsible for genocide, quotes. But 5 days later, in this place, the Minister of Global Affairs denied Secretary Kerry's recognition, saying instead that the U.S. wanted to, quotes, do more research. Now, the British Parliament, the U.S. House of Representatives, have unanimously endorsed a recognition of the genocide as such. ISIS itself doesn't deny its effort to exterminate these historic communities, so why won't the government just recognize this genocide?
The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Thank you very much. The horrors committed by the so-called Islamic State have the hallmark of genocide, but official recognition of genocide is to be done by a credible judicial process following a proper international investigation, and it's an investigation that we will do everything to support, as I have said to the UN Secretary General Special Advisor to the prevention of genocide, and the UK ally has said also that the government is not a prosecutor, a judge, or a jury. Canada continue to stand side to side.
The honourable member for Calgary Mid-Deport.
Mr. Speaker, that is legal pettifogging. Those are word games. This is not about a judicial process. This House and the previous Conservative government recognized the historical reality of the Armenian genocide without an international judicial process. We did so with respect to other historic genocides. This is happening today. We don't have time to wait for lawyers, Mr. Speaker. We don't want to give ISIS the benefit of the doubt in a judicial process. We need to simply reflect the reality that they are seeking to exterminate the indigenous communities of Mesopotamia. Why won't this government follow the lead of Britain and the United States and do that?
The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Yes, Madam Speaker, and it's why we have improved the plan to fight ISIL and to be sure that this awful terrorist group will stop to kill people. Canada is more and more involved in a more effective way with our allies to be sure that we will win and that this terrorist group will stop its atrocities.
The honourable member for Calgary-Mindeport.
But, Madam Speaker, that's exactly why the government has refused to acknowledge or recognize it as a genocide as such, because that government decided, or put an end to the combat mission, to put an end to that mission against Daesh. And that government is the one that withdrew our fighter jets that struck these people responsible for genocide in the Middle East. So are they refusing to recognize genocide because Canada has put an end to its combat mission? The Honourable Minister. As my colleague knows full well, Canada tripled its effort to train combatants who will fight on the ground against this terrorist group. We have doubled our capability to obtain information with respect to where the group is located. We have strengthened and provided additional humanitarian assistance. We have helped Jordan and Lebanon, and we will continue to do so. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Thank you, Madam Speaker. One of the aspects that characterizes this government is that it boasts about these great principles, but does exactly the opposite. So much for transparency. The government and ministers must account for their expenditures, but many ministers still haven't disclosed their expenditures. And, Madam Speaker, the example comes from the top down. The President of the Treasury Board himself, the one who has to scrutinize on a daily basis and look at those expenditures, put in his files late after we questioned it. So, Madam Speaker, why are these paragons of virtue doing one thing, saying one thing, and doing the opposite?
The honourable member for Vancouver Quadra.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians deserve openness and transparency, and the Liberal Party has been a leader on that. In fact, it was the Liberal Prime Minister, Paul Martin, who was the first to proactively disclose the expenses of ministers. And then it was a Liberal leader, our Prime Minister, who in opposition led the charge on being the first party in the House of Commons to have open and transparent disclosure of MPs, and the other parties, sometimes reluctantly, followed suit. So we will continue to disclose our expenses because it is the right thing to do.
The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Well, Madam Speaker, it's always interesting to hear someone in that government talking about Paul Martin, who had a very different approach to the current one, but on a different topic. And now, with respect to C10, Madam Speaker, what we can say is that the Minister of Transport is good at improvising. Yesterday in the afternoon, he said that the Quebec Minister hadn't understood something. Well, Madam Speaker, does the Minister, or can the Minister today give us a clear and concrete explanation as to why they've shut down debate on C10? Or is he going to keep making up or improvising another answer today? We clearly explained over the course of the day the situation, and the Quebec government and the government of Manitoba do intend to drop their cases with Air Canada, and that enables us to clarify the legislation with respect to the Air Canada Public Participation Act. That's what we're doing, and I hope that my colleagues in this House will work with us as we move through the stages of this bill.
For New Westminster, Burnaby.
Today, the Prime Minister will be signing the Paris Climate Change Agreement, but unfortunately, the Prime Minister seems to be continuing along with the same targets that they had under the previous Conservative government. And they seem to be satisfied with that. So apart from all this rhetoric and nice images, nothing's really changed with this new Prime Minister. The same plan, same lack of ambition, and the same timeline and targets as the Conservatives. They seem to be very happy with that. So how will the Prime Minister respect his signature when there's no plan to achieve the Paris objectives?
The Honourable...
To power after 10 years of inaction on the part of the previous government with respect to climate change. In the short 6 months that we've been in power, we've launched a pan-Canadian process to address this on a critical basis. We've actually been constructive part of actually achieving the Paris Agreement. And today, on Earth Day, I think Canadians are extremely proud that our Prime Minister is in New York to be one of the first signatories to the historic Paris Agreement.
The honourable member for Westminster Burnaby.
Talk is certainly cheap, and Liberal talking points are even cheaper. But when it comes to Liberals talking about climate change without actually doing anything, the results are actually very expensive. Liberals signed the Kyoto Accord with a promise to reduce emissions. By the time they left office, emissions had soared. And Environment Canada just reported that they continue to rise under the new Liberal government. What a failure. So they claim to have a plan. So here's a very simple question. How many tons of greenhouse gas emissions are Liberals projecting to reduce in each of the next 3 years? No more talking points, just give some answers.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary for the Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, unlike my colleague on the other side of the House, this government actually recognizes that Canada is a federation and it actually involves the provinces. And so we are working actively with our provincial and territorial colleagues to develop a pan-Canadian approach to reducing carbon emissions and to actually developing a robust, clean growth economy. We're proud of the work that we've done. We're proud of the work that our Prime Minister has done. We're proud of the fact that he is one of the first signatories on this agreement in New York today.
The Honourable Member for Berthier-Maskinongé.
Sadly, no answers and just more hot air from the Liberals on climate change. While the NDP government in Alberta is making strides, the lack of federal action leaves us failing to live up to our international commitments. A new report from the Conference Board gives Canada a D when it comes to protecting the environment, trailing far, far behind other countries. Canadians cherish our environment, and it is part of our identity. When will the Liberals make actual progress on our commitment to review the process?
The Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
We agree with the results of the Conference Board of Canada. 10 years of inaction on the part of the previous government with respect to environmental matters relating to climate change, environmental assessments and other things have left Canada in a very poor situation in the world in terms of our environmental record. This government is taking firm steps on the climate agenda, which I've already referred to. We've committed to launching a review of our environmental assessment processes. This is a government that understands that the economy and the environment must go hand in hand in the modern age, and that is exactly what we are going to do.
The Honourable Member for Berthier-Maskinongé. Madam Speaker, fighting climate change is the greatest challenge of the century. It's our moral duty to deal with it and to devote all the necessary means to it. Rhetoric, images, inaction are no longer acceptable. Future generations are counting on us to take action. Can the Prime Minister explain young people and to our children how he will meet the Paris objectives when there's no plan in place to do so? Is he going to continue repeating the same fiasco as they did with Kyoto?
Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, I would highlight some of the significant investments that this government actually made in the budget, where we actually made significant investments in public transit, $1 billion in clean tech, and a range of investments to address climate change. We've embarked on a pan-Canadian discussion that will allow us to work with the provinces proactively to address climate emissions. This is the most that any Canadian government has done in the last 30 years, and we intend to achieve our targets. We intend to be part of a productive international conversation, and that is exactly what we're going to do.
The Honourable Member for Calgary-Nose Hill.
Madam Speaker, the Liberals are very good at self-promoting the refugee initiative, but private sponsorship groups from Newfoundland have had to turn to a letter-writing campaign to demand action on their stalled applications. There are countless groups across the country in this position, and private sponsorship groups provide refugees with an instant support network and immediately help families transition to their new life in Canada. So, Madam Speaker, if the refugee initiative is as successful as they claim, why are these private groups being ignored while at the same time government-sponsored refugees are having to rely on food banks?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship.
Madam Speaker, the outpouring of support for the national effort to settle refugees in this country has been overwhelming. As the Minister stated repeatedly in this House, a grand national project of this size and scope is not without its challenges. We have met targets to bring in 25,000 individuals by the end of February. We're working to bring in 44,800 humanitarian people under the refugee category alone in 2016. That includes government-sponsored individuals and privately sponsored individuals. We're thankful for the incredible support in Newfoundland and other provinces, and we're working to address those needs as quickly as possible. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Calgary-Nose Hill.
Well, Madam Speaker, these targets should include quality of life for these refugees. More than a dozen Ottawa food banks have reported an increase in demand in coming from government-sponsored Syrian refugees. Most of these families have turned to the Gloucester Emergency Food Cupboard, where 75 Syrian families, for a total of over 400 people, have registered at the food cupboard. Will the minister tell the House what his plan is to address the needs of these families, or is he simply going to try and set up yet another photo op?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, I welcome the question from the opposition critic and her concern for the welfare of refugees in this country. We obviously share that concern. Our government shares it. I share it as a refugee myself. But I find it highly implausible and a bit, let's say, inconsistent to talk about the quality of life for our refugees coming from a party that eliminated health care for refugee applicants when they were in office in violation of the Charter. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Markham Unionville.
Madam Speaker, sports groups from across the country are struggling to meet the needs of refugees brought to Canada. Government-sponsored refugees are using food banks to meet the day-to-day needs. They are not gaining language training services, and they are not being empowered to successful transition to life in Canada. Why did the Liberals focus on bringing in government-sponsored refugees if they had no plan to support these refugees?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
So the answer to that is simple, Madam Speaker. We concentrate on government-assisted refugees because we take seriously the duty of care that Canada has on the international stage to respond to a national and international humanitarian crisis. To purport that these individuals are being left unattended to or unsupported by the government is simply incorrect, Madam Speaker. The statistics speak to $600 million of settlement funding directed at the refugees themselves. Are there barriers along the way? Of course. Are there challenges we're trying to address? Of course. We're doing that in solidarity with Canadians who believe in this effort and believe in this government's response. Thank you.
Honourable Member for Markham Unionville.
Madam Speaker, the Edmonton-based Islamic Family Social Services Association has said the government needs to step up. They need to boost support for Syrian refugees who are increasingly turning to the food bank to eat. One representative said it is a huge problem. The Liberals are not great with helping them resettle. Did the Liberals just pick an arbitrary number and date and think they could wash their hands clean of the rest?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, the answer to that is no. And again, I'm refreshed by the fact that a member of the Conservative opposition is actually citing an Islamic-based organization in Edmonton to support his proposition. If we recollect, Madam Speaker, our position is not only to accept 25,000 refugees into this country by February 29th, but it's also to accept them no matter what race, religion, or perhaps persuasion they come from. A distinct contrast to the policy of the government, of the precedent government, which actually cherry-picked religious minorities to the detriment of Sunni Muslims. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Barrie-Innisfil.
Madam Speaker, I wish my arms were long enough so I could pat the honourable member on his back. Madam Speaker, on Tuesday, I asked the Minister of Immigration about the Liberals wasting $6.4 million to renovate Canadian Forces bases for refugees that never came. The Minister's response was, my colleague beside me, and I quote, the colleague beside me, the Minister of National Defence, confirms there is nothing truthful in his comments about defence. The Defence Minister knew that money was spent. And Madam Speaker, why did the Defence Minister give the Minister of Immigration false information, and why did they both mislead Canadians?
The Honourable Minister of National Defence, Parliamentary Secretary.
CAF has been engaged along with other elements of the government in this massive repatriating of these refugees. They've contributed to the medical screenings, they've contributed to the airlift, and of course they contributed to the potential housing. But because Canadians have stepped up, the housing that was renovated at the time in anticipation of the refugees coming to this country was not used. The happy consequence, Mr. Speaker, or Madam Speaker, is that these refugees are housed.
Honourable Member for Barrie-Innisfil.
We need to answer the question, Madam Speaker, and maybe I'll try one more time. One would think, Madam Speaker, that these two ministers would have a handle on what's going on, considering how closely they supposedly worked on this file.
Our order paper question signed off by the Minister of Defence confirmed that this money was in fact spent on barracks which were never used. Madam Speaker, did the Minister of Defence not know what he signed on, or is he deliberately trying to mislead Canadians?
Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of National Defence.
Madam Speaker, it's only the Conservative opposition that can turn happy news into bad news. Surely to goodness it's good news that the barracks will not have to be used. Surely to goodness it's good news that the ultimate deployment of $6 million to upgrade the facilities is good news. The good news, Madam Speaker, is that all of these refugees are now located where they should be, in the towns and cities across this country.
The Honourable Member for Abitibi, Bay James, Nunavik. Thank you, Madam Speaker. 6 years ago, Canada endorsed the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, but since then, little has been done to implement it. The bill that I tabled yesterday for the second time will make it possible to ensure that Canadian legislation is consistent with the Declaration. The Prime Minister mandated his ministers to make implementing the Declaration the main priority on the road to a new nation-to-nation relationship. My question is very simple, Madam Speaker. Will the Liberals support my bill as they did when they were in opposition? Yes or no? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I would like to thank the member opposite for his long-term commitment and engagement with respect to reconciliation. The government is determined to implement the UN Declaration. We need to work closely with the First Nations, Inuit, and the Métis Nation to consider all mechanisms available for achieving this, including legislation. The bill has just been tabled, and we are currently considering it.
Churchill to Wananu-Askey.
Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister yesterday in New York told a group of American students that Canada doesn't have the baggage of colonialism. I repeat, he said that Canada doesn't have the baggage of colonialism. So maybe that explains why 6 days after taking office, this government signed a deal to let the Catholic Church off the hook in terms of their financial obligations to residential school survivors. How can this government talk about reconciliation when they're signing secret deals that undermine restitution?
The Honourable Member for Indigenous and Northern Affairs.
Let me be clear, Madam Speaker, that this government did not sign an agreement. The agreement was signed on October 30th, 5 days before the new government took office. We believe that the Catholic Church, and only the Catholic Church, can achieve reconciliation with Indigenous people in this country, and we are urging them to do the right thing, pay the money that they promised to pay. They have a moral obligation to do this for the healing of Indigenous people. And in clarification of the Prime Minister,
the Honourable Member for Carleton.
Clause 34 of this week's budget bill raises the tax rate on small businesses by a point, and a point and a half over the next 3 respective years. This contradicts the Liberal platform and the Prime Minister's mandate letter to his minister to commit to maintain the low 9% rate that the previous Conservative government had enacted. Would the Liberals entertain a friendly amendment which would use wording right out of their election platform to keep the rate low at 9% so our job creators can flourish and hire more Canadians?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, I thank my honourable colleague for his question. Madam Speaker, let's be clear for once for all on this issue. The tax rate for small businesses went from 11% to 10.5% as of January 1st, 2016. Madam Speaker, those are facts. What Canadian business needs is a strong economy, Madam Speaker, and it's exactly what Budget 2016 is doing. We're investing in infrastructure, we're investing in innovation, we're investing in clean tech. Canadian business are going to benefit from this budget, and Canadian families as well. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Carleton.
Madam Speaker, the reduction in taxes for small businesses was already put in place by the previous Conservative government, and the Liberals didn't do anything to maintain it. On the contrary, This week, they introduced legislation designed to increase it by 1.5% for small and medium-sized businesses over the next 3 years. And that runs counter to the very election platform. Would they accept an amendment to put in place or implement their own policy put forth in their platform and to enable our small businesses to keep money in their pockets? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Madam Speaker, I'd like to thank the Honourable Member for his question. Madam Speaker, allow me to re-establish the facts. The tax rate for SMEs in Canada went from 11 to 10.5% as of January 1st, 2016. Madam Speaker, the commitment that we made during the campaign was to invest in the Canadian economy to help SMEs and Canadian families and people in the middle class. That's exactly what we did with Budget 2016. That's exactly what we'll continue to do.
For Edmonton Riverbend.
Madam Speaker, let me reestablish the facts. Every time we turn around, the Liberals are destroying opportunities for job creators. Liberals are kneecapping the clean technology sector by eliminating the hiring credit for small businesses. This tax credit helps small companies hire the people they need to develop clean technologies and bring those clean technologies to market. Under Conservatives, this sector saw consistent growth. Why do Liberals believe this tax is a great idea, even though it's killing the sector they so eagerly pretend to support?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to thank my honourable colleague for his question. Madam Speaker, I would just invite him to read the entire budget. Because actually, Madam Speaker, what we've done is historic. We're investing $1 billion in clean tech across this country to make sure that we can invest in innovation and new technology. That's what Canadians wanted. That's what we're delivering, Madam Speaker.
Honourable Member for Calgary-Shepherd.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Business professionals are worried about the Liberal tax hikes on small professional corporations. Dr. Melanie, a physician in my riding, has said these tax changes would mean less clinical hours in the community. That means less frontline health services.
Shame.
The Prime Minister thinks small business are just ways for wealthier Canadians to avoid taxes. Dr. Melanie is a hard-working GP serving her community, not a wealthy tax dodger. When are the Liberals going to shelve these tax hikes and stop punishing hard-working doctors like Dr. Melanie?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to... The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary?
No.
Oh, sorry, the Honourable Minister of Small Business and Tourism. Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I'd like to thank the member opposite to remind Canadians and all members in this House that this budget is squarely focused on revitalizing the Canadian economy. And that's what small businesses need most. We are engaging with small businesses. We are engaging with Canadians. Our investments in Budget 2016 will grow the economy. They will grow. Increased economic growth is actually good. It's better for business, more orders, more sales, which means better business. Our small business owners will be more.
The Honourable Member for Victoria.
Yesterday, a new report from the Parliamentary Budget Officer highlighted the lack of a national strategy for dealing with greenhouse gas emissions and how our current approach is going to cost us all dearly. Liberals continue to operate under the old Conservative plans and targets. They're great at environmental rhetoric, Madam Speaker, but time and again they fall down on getting anything done. The Parliamentary Secretary just refused to answer this question, so let's try again. Exactly how much will greenhouse gas emissions be reduced in each of the next 3 years?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Environment and
Madam
Climate
Speaker, I'm not sure if the honourable member was listening, but Canada is a federation. That involves provinces and territories. The Canadian government is working with the provinces and territories to develop a pan-Canadian framework that's focused on reducing emissions and on investing in the clean growth economy. We will be working over the next several months with our provincial counterparts to develop that, and we are also working in conjunction with our American partners and have already announced a number of measures in that regard. This is the responsible and the Canadian way to approach things, and this is exactly what we're going to do.
Honourable Member for Abitibi-Temiskaming. Madam Speaker, for the Conservatives, protecting species at risk was not at all a priority. 82 species were recommended for the Species at Risk Registry, but the Conservatives did nothing. We're still waiting. In his first 6 months, the Liberal minister didn't do anything, but it isn't very complicated. They are already recommended. So when will the minister take action? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you.
The honourable member for Fisheries, Oceans and Coast Guard. Minister, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and happy Friday, everybody. I'd like to thank the member for her question, and I couldn't agree with her more that that was an issue that was totally ignored by the previous government, and I'd like to inform the member and his House that actually yesterday I signed off on a whole bunch of those things, and we are addressing the backlog this year. Thank you.
The honourable member for Knox-Addington.
Madam Speaker, last fall we campaigned on a promise to finally take action on climate change. Canadians understand that the economy and environment are not two separate issues, they go hand in hand. To that end, I understand that the Prime Minister is in New York today to formally sign the Paris Agreement on climate change. Could the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of the Environment and Climate Change please inform this House about the important step that the Prime Minister is taking today? Thank you.
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This government came into office after 10 years of complete and utter inaction on climate change on the part of the previous government. Exactly. Since elected, this government has played a very significant role in the achievement of the historic Paris Agreement. It has launched a pan-Canadian federal, provincial, territorial process to develop a pan-Canadian plan to reduce emissions and to invest in the clean growth economy. And we've concluded significant measures with our American friends relating to methane emissions and a number of other measures. Mr. Speaker, we have done an enormous amount in 6 months, and on Earth Day, I'm extremely proud that the Prime Minister is signing a historic agreement in New York today.
The
Honourable Member for Beauport-Limoilou. Madam Speaker, recently the Liberal government announced the creation of 6 ministerial advisor groups within Veterans Canada. This is something I'm hearing about from the veterans themselves. Can the minister explain what exactly is the mandate of these groups? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Veterans Affairs.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to my honourable member for the question. It's an excellent question because this is something I really want to share with the rest of the House. The Minister of Veterans Affairs wants to find out really what the issues are for veterans. And he wants to give veterans the opportunity to come to Ottawa, to sit down with the people and share that information. In the past, that information had been controlled. Now, I'm going to sit down with all of these 6 groups, and we're going to find out, and we're going to...
The Honourable Member for Beauport-Limoilou. Madam Speaker, that's a very good thing, but beyond the actual mandate, people want to know certain things. What qualifications are required? How are the members chosen? And have these members signed non-disclosure agreements? So if the government wants to be transparent, why have the members and mandates not been made public?
Veterans Affairs Associate Minister.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I appreciate the question because it is about making sure that this government consults and gets out there and gets the right information and gets the advice it needs in order to make the right decisions. Right now, because of the inaction of the previous government, the list of work that needs to be done in Veterans Affairs is huge. So we need to talk to all these different groups of people and find out how to prioritize all this work that needs to be done.
The honourable member for Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke.
Madam Speaker, the Liberals are cancelling funding for the Integrated Soldier System project. This is a uniform that protects the individual soldier from chemical and radiological weaponry and enemy fire. Who can forget when the Liberals sent our soldiers into the desert of Afghanistan in forest green combat fatigues, making them targets? Why do the lives of the women and men who serve in the Canadian Armed Forces mean so little to the Liberals?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary
Madam
to the Minister of
Speaker,
National
you'll be
Defence.
interested to know that in the last 4 years, while that member's government was the majority government, they cut back the funding for the forces by $3.3 billion.
Shame.
They took lapsing to an art form to the point of they have lost a lot of money that was available for the men and women in uniform that she professes to be concerned about. Had her government done the proper procurement cycles, we would not have the problems that she's...
The honourable member for Saskatoon University.
Madam Speaker, the Liberals' first budget goes out of the way to discriminate against the province of Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan receives less than 1% of federal funding for transportation infrastructure in this budget, even though we represent 3% of the population of Canada. Under the Conservative government, transportation funding was allocated on a per capita basis. Why is this government shortchanging the people of Saskatchewan?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Infrastructure. Thank you, Madam Speaker. This question gives me an opportunity to say how much we invested in the last budget for infrastructure. $60 billion. It's a record amount. $20 billion for various types of infrastructure that he will be interested in. So the minister should be happy as well about this. The Honourable Member for Témiscouata-Les Basques. Madam Speaker, for the second year in a row, the Université du Québec à Rimouski's research vessel will have no home port because the federal government has condemned the Rimouski port after it neglected it for a number of years. So this is very important research being done by this vessel. For 6 months, the government has done nothing despite representations. So it seems that the minister's office isn't interested at all. So will the Minister of Transport take his responsibilities and find a solution?
Transport.
The Honourable Minister of Transport. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you for that question. My colleague has talked to me about this situation. We are looking into it, and we are looking at other ports that the federal government is responsible for. The Honourable Member for Saint-Hyacinthe-Bagotte. Madam Speaker, Avis de Recherche is a public interest television network. Child protection, missing persons, violence against women, crime prevention. No other network is interested in these issues. If nothing is done, though, the network will have to close next week because of a CRTC decision. Now, under the Act, the Minister of Heritage can step in. Why isn't she doing so? Honourable Minister of Canadian Heritage. Thank you. I want to thank my colleague for her question. I'm very aware of the request. Avis de Recherche certainly does good work. We want to make sure that it takes full advantage of its license, and clearly there are decisions that the CRTC makes with respect to broadcasting, and the CRTC has this jurisdiction.
Simcoe.
Next year, Canada observes the 150th anniversary of Confederation. But a funny thing happened on the way to the celebrations. The new government left out Confederation. That's right. When the minister introduced the themes for the 150th anniversary of Confederation, Confederation wasn't there. Not even the subject of Canadian history is a theme. Why Liberal war on history?
The honourable member for Canadian Heritage.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would like to stress to my honourable colleague that we have many programs within Canadian Heritage which are in line with celebrating the important landmarks of Canadian history. That being said, Madam Speaker, I would also like to stress that I won't take any lessons coming from a past government that forgot to include Indigenous people as part of their way to commemorate our history, and that's why the reconciliation with Indigenous people will be part of the 150th anniversary.
Honourable member for York Simcoe.
At committee, the minister justified excluding Confederation from the 150th anniversary themes by saying we shouldn't play politics with it. Admittedly, Conservatives John A. Macdonald and Georgette Chan Cartier drove the project, but Macdonald's arch rivals, George Brown and Oliver Mowat, were partners and full founding fathers. In fact, Confederation is the ultimate bipartisan example of Canadian nation building. Why won't the Liberal government make Confederation a theme of the 150th anniversary of Confederation?
Minister of Canadian Heritage.
As my colleague well knows, and as because he's been involved in the past government, there are programs within Canadian Heritage to support the history of Confederation. As for an example, last year there was an entire play that was supported 100% by Canadian Heritage on Sir John A. Macdonald. In that context, we'll continue to support historical landmarks, but I must stress again, we will make sure to put emphasis on
the honourable member for Barrie, Springwater, Oro, Medonte.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Liberals have proven they simply can't be trusted to spend taxpayers' money responsibly. With their vanity trips to Hollywood and now to a gym in New York, the Liberal government is all about photo ops and self-promotion. Madam Speaker, we are worried about where the Liberals will spend this $50 million dedicated to Destination Canada. Can the minister stand in the House today and tell us how the money will be spent and how much of it will be spent on advertising?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. What an excellent question. The tourism industry is an industry that is an economic driver. It is a job creator, and that is great that we recognize that $50 million has been committed to Destination Canada. We know the previous government had no problem cutting tourism because they did not see the value of it. So we will be working closely with Destination Canada. We will ensure that we have a presence on the international stage. Canada is a country that everyone should visit. We know that we offer the best and brightest, and we look forward to ensuring that the dollars are spent very well. Destination Canada is excited, and Canadians are.
The honourable member for Glengarry, Prescott Russell.
Madame la Présidente, dans un souci de...
Madam Speaker, in looking for more transparency, which is the approach of this government, the Minister of Canadian Heritage recently delegated a major amount of authority for funding to various organizations. Can the government tell us the objectives of this delegation and the results to date? The Minister of Canadian Heritage. I want to thank my colleague for this important question. This week, again, I received very positive comments from a number of organizations because through this delegation of authority, the requests for funding are dealt with much more quickly. 2 to 4 months earlier than before. So these organizations are pleasantly surprised by this change in approach. This helps them plan their activities. So this issue has been resolved.
Madam Speaker, on March 11th, I asked the Liberals if they could tell us the status of Canadians John Ritzel, Robert Hall, and 2 others held captive in the Philippines. The Parliamentary Secretary assured us that he was on top of the file. We would like to see our fellow Canadians return home alive, so can the Liberals update us today on the situation?
The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
I want to thank my colleague for the question, and I know that she cares a lot, the whole House cares a lot, and she will understand that under the circumstances, it's preferable that I don't comment more.
The member for Central Nova.
Madam Speaker, we all know the importance of Canadian research to the national economy. Science and innovation help create economic growth, foster a positive environment for entrepreneurs, and find new solutions for sustainable economic development. For these advancements to take place, we must ensure that researchers have the tools and resources that they need. Can the parliamentary secretary to the Minister of Science tell this House what our government is doing to ensure research infrastructure is properly funded?
Honourable member, Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Science.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to thank my honourable colleague for the question, and I'm proud to say that we are delivering on our promise to restore science to Canada. Budget 2016 announced $2 billion to promote economic growth by improving research and innovation infrastructure at Canada's post-secondary institutions. These investments provide our research community with access to state-of-the-art facilities and equipment. These important tools will be used to make new discoveries that will better the lives of Canadians and grow our economy. This is a great investment in science, Madam Speaker, and it's a great investment in Canada.
Member for Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan.
Madam Speaker, people choose a medical career because they want to care for the sick, but without conscience protection, doctors in Ontario will now be forced to facilitate killing. Dr. Nancy Naylor of Strathroy, Ontario will not be renewing her license. Dr. Naylor has practiced family and palliative medicine for 40 years. She writes, "I have no wish to stop, but I will not be told that I must go against my moral conscience." So will the government implement conscience protection and euthanasia legislation and let Dr. Naylor continue her vital work?
Minister of Health.
Madam Speaker, I'm aware of the excellent work of Dr. Naylor, and I'm pleased that she has had such an illustrious career in palliative care. One of the reasons that we introduced Bill C-14 was because of the fact that Canadians need access to all options for care at the end of life. We are committed in this government to make sure, as the Supreme Court has indicated, that people have access to assistance in dying, and I'm pleased that people like Dr. Naylor are also providing assistance for people to live well to the end of their lives.
The honourable member for Pointe-de-l'Île. Mr. Speaker, the British monarchy has caused irreparable harm to the Quebec people. Another poll this week shows that 80% of Quebecers do not support the monarchy. In response, the Minister of Heritage has shown arrogance, or perhaps ignorance, to the point of saying that constitutional monarchy was our choice. Can the Minister of Heritage tell us when Quebecers made that decision? Was it in 1840 with the Union Act, the 1870 Confederation? Honourable Minister, thank you. Well, as my colleague knows, yesterday was the Queen's birthday, her 90th, and I want once again to wish her a very happy birthday. And I want to remind everyone of her importance as head of state. The honourable member for Repentigny. Madam Speaker, on April 22nd, the Prime Minister is in New York signing the Paris Agreement on climate change. The parliamentary budget officer yesterday said that without major changes, the government's greenhouse gas emissions reduction targets are unattainable. Worse, even the old inadequate targets that the Conservatives brought in won't be met. The government is giving his word to the world, but does he realize that he can only keep it by rejecting Energy East, the pipeline project? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Proud I personally am that the Canadian Prime Minister is in New York today to sign the historic Paris Agreement. I think our government is also incredibly proud, and Canadians are proud of the work that Canada has done with respect to climate change since coming into office. The Parliamentary Budget Officer's report discussed a pathway on climate change. It is one pathway. What we are focused on is developing a pan-Canadian pathway that is inclusive, that brings in provinces, territories, and Aboriginal and Indigenous peoples to create a strategy that is a Canadian strategy that will allow us to manage our emissions down while concurrently creating a clean growth economy.
The Honourable Member for Pierre Boucher, Les Patriotes Verchères. Mr. Speaker, Quebec's entrepreneurial history is at risk because under federal legislation, it is better and more profitable to sell your business abroad than to pass it on to a member of the family. It can cost you as much as a luxury house, which is unacceptable. The government of Quebec has called for change, and last week I sent a letter to the minister. This morning, the president of CGI Group has asked for changes. So when will the minister stop ignoring business needs in Quebec? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I would like to thank my honourable colleague for his question. Our government is committed, Madam Speaker, to creating a climate that will help businesses succeed across the country. We will continue to support innovative Canadian businesses so that they can be prosperous internationally as well. We will continue to offer programs.
Routine proceedings.
Routine proceedings. So c'est tabling of documents?
No.
J'ai l'honneur de déposer sur le bureau.
I have the honor of tabling the Strategic Plan 2016 to 19 for the House Administration.
Okay. Je vais tout ça dessus.
Order. I'd like to remind the honourable members that the House continues and proceedings continue. If you have a conversation, I'm sure you all have some very important things to say to each other. If you could just take it into the lobby, that would be very much appreciated. Now, the honourable member for Winnipeg North.
In tabling Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 36.8, I have the honour to table in both official languages the government's response to 3 petitions.
Tabling of documents, the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of International Trade.
Do you? I'll get a camera shot of it, too.
And pursuant to Standing Order 32.2, I have the great honour to enthusiastically table in both official languages the treaty entitled Protocol to the 2007 World Wine Trade Group